Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night with the eerie sensation that someone is standing right beside your bed? You open your eyes, and there is no one there, yet your heart is pounding as if you had just run a marathon, your body is drenched in a cold sweat, and that heavy sensation on your chest, that invisible pressure, refuses to lift until sunrise. Have you ever had nightmares so real that you could still feel the pain even after waking up? As if someone had actually touched, struck, or assaulted you while you slept. You rise in the morning exhausted, drained, as if your night had been a battle because, in truth, it was, but that battle didn't come out of nowhere, it stemmed from an object hidden within your own home, perhaps something you see every day without a second thought. Are there items in your house that you never actually bought? Gifts accepted without question, a mirror from a colleague, a perfume received during a visit, a piece of jewelry inherited from a grandmother, a length of fabric or a garment given for no apparent reason. And ever since these objects entered your home, things have gone wrong. Your health is failing for no medical reason, your marriage is deteriorating month by month, your finances are collapsing despite your hard work, your children's behavior changes overnight, and you cannot understand why. You pray, you fast, you go to church, yet nothing changes. And I am going to explain to you why nothing changes. My name is Esimpa, I am 42 years old, and for 18 years, I was one of the most active agents of a family witchcraft clan in Cameroon. My primary mission was to plant cursed objects in people's homes, objects spiritually prepared to open invisible doors, doors through which demons would enter every night to destroy lives from the inside out. Today, I am a free man set free by God's love, and I am going to reveal to you 4 types of objects that sorcerers hide in people's homes. I will explain how they get them into your house, exactly what they do once inside, and why your life has stopped working properly ever since these objects were placed there. I will reveal 4 specific categories, 4 types of objects, but the 4th category is the one that will truly frighten you, because it is completely invisible. So, stay until the end, and if this video speaks to you, if it resonates with something you are experiencing, please hit the like button, because the more this video circulates, the more families will be warned and protected. But before I reveal these 4 objects, and before I show you exactly how they work and what they do in your home every night, let me tell you how I ended up here, how a boy, an ordinary man from Yaoundé, who became someone who destroyed other people's homes. I grew up in Yaoundé, in the Melon neighborhood. On the surface, it was a normal family. My father was a civil servant, my mother a trader at the Mokele markets, and we went to church on Sundays. But from my paternal grandfather, there was a spiritual legacy passed down through generations in ancient power. My grandfather, Papa Mbida, was the guardian of a secret family cult in our village near Hong Kong, Zamba. When he was 15, he fell gravely ill. He summoned his grandsons one by one. I was the 3rd. He looked at me and said, "You are the one who will carry what must be carried." He took my hand, he whispered words in an ancient language, and something entered me. I felt it physically, an intense cold coursing through my entire body. My grandfather died 3 days later. After his death, I began to see things, shadows, faces in mirrors, and to hear voices. My family knew. Instead of helping me, they sent me to my father's uncle in the village. My training lasted 3 years. I learned rituals, incantations, how to prepare objects and charge them spiritually, and how to introduce them into people's homes, and above all, I learned how these objects opened doors for demons to enter every night. Now, listen closely. The first category of objects we used was mirrors, specific mirrors, spiritually prepared through precise rituals. Here is how it worked. We would take an ordinary mirror, size or appearance didn't matter, and perform a ritual on it for 3 consecutive nights. It was placed at a crossroads between midnight and 3 a.m. Certain substances were poured over it, and incantations were recited. By the 3rd night, the mirror was ready. It became a permanent gateway between the visible and invisible worlds. And how did this mirror find its way into your home? That is the insidious part. It wasn't simply dropped off in secret. Instead, it was given to you by someone you knew, a friend, a colleague, or a sister-in-law. Sometimes, That person didn't even realize what they were doing. They had bought the mirror at a market where a sorcerer had specifically placed it so it would end up in your home. You would receive the gift, place it in your bedroom, and from that moment on, the mirror would become active every night. Entities would enter through that gateway. It stood right beside your bed, planting nightmares, confusion, anxiety, and destructive thoughts in your mind. In the morning, you would wake up exhausted, as if you hadn't slept at all. I personally prepared dozens of mirrors like these during my 18 years in the darkness. I'm going to tell you about a specific case that still haunts me to this day. There was a family in the Banabri neighborhood of Dwilu, a couple with 3 children. The husband worked for a construction company, and the wife was a school teacher. They were a Christian couple who went to church every Sunday. The wife, in particular, was a woman of prayer. She would rise at 5 a.m. every morning to pray and fasted twice a week. She was active in her church's women's committee. However, someone in the husband's extended family couldn't stand the marriage. This person felt the wife had too much influence over her husband, that she was pulling him away from his family, and came to see me. They said, "I want this marriage to end." I prepared a mirror for the situation, a beautiful decorative mirror with a truly elegant gold frame, the kind any woman would be happy to receive. I had it delivered to her through one of the husband's cousins. The cousin knew nothing about it. She simply thought she was giving a lovely mirror to decorate their home. The wife received the gift, thanked the cousin warmly, and placed the mirror in her bedroom, facing the marital bed. Exactly 3 weeks later, the first signs appeared. The husband began having strange dreams about women he didn't know, women who would approach him in his sleep. He would wake up at night, agitated and disturbed. He didn't tell his wife. He was ashamed. Then he began to grow distant, irritable, and aggressive over trifles. Small arguments escalated into violent conflicts. Within 2 months, he was no longer sleeping in the same room. Within 4 months, the husband had a mistress, a woman he had met at work who had suddenly become irresistible to him. Within 6 months, he filed for divorce, and this Christian woman, who prayed every morning at 5 a.m., could not understand what was happening in her life. She wept, she prayed even more fervently, and she fasted for days on end, yet nothing changed, because she did not realize that every night through the mirror hanging on her bedroom wall, spirits of division, lust, and marital destruction were entering and working methodically to tear the couple apart. The mirror was a beautiful, gleaming, and seemingly innocent, but in the spiritual realm, it was a wide-open doorway. And this family is just one case, one among dozens I have dealt with over the past 18 years. When God set me free, the first thing I felt wasn't joy, it was guilt. It was an overwhelming guilt, because I knew how many households I had ruined, how many marriages I had shattered, and how many lives I had sabotaged with the objects I used to place in the homes of innocent people. Understanding what is happening to you is necessary. It is the first step, but it is not enough. Which object opened doors in your home? Even if you discover the object and remove it, the doors remain open. The paths the demons carved into your household still exist. It is like an infection. You can pull a thorn from your foot, but if you do not treat the infection caused by that thorn, the pain persists. The poison continues to circulate in your blood, and the damage continues to spread. I myself went through a process after my deliverance, 21 days, day by day, to identify every door I had opened and systematically close it, to break every bond I had created, to annul every pact I had sealed, because, yes, the sorcerer himself suffers from what he does. The doors he opens to attack others are also doors opened in his own life, and the very techniques I used to plant objects in homes were the same ones used by other sorcerers, to block finances, destroy health, cause infertility, and turn children against their parents. It is all connected. It is all part of the same system of destruction. People from Cameroon, Ivory Coast, Congo, and Senegal write to me every week to say they have finally understood what has been happening to them for years. The link is in the description. Now, let's get back to the objects, because the second type is even harder to detect than mirrors. If you have experienced unexplained nocturnal attacks, recurring nightmares, or a sudden deterioration in your household since a certain object appeared, I invite you to take part in a powerful action right now. Write this in the comments: in the name of Jesus, I break every mandate attached to any object hidden in my home, and I close every door open to the enemy. Do not skip this step. Participating in a public declaration is powerful. When you name the assignment and break it alongside other believers, you are waging spiritual warfare, and I can tell you from experience that when hundreds of believers participate and proclaim victory together, those assignments are broken. So, participate now. Write, in the name of Jesus, I break every mandate attached to any object hidden in my home, and I close every door open to the enemy. The second type of object we used involved perfumes and incenses. This practice is extremely widespread in Francophone Africa. Hardly anyone speaks openly about it, yet it is a formidable weapon. Here is how it works. In the spiritual realm, certain scents and fragrances are not merely pleasant aromas, they act as vehicles like a truck transporting an invisible cargo. The scent is the truck, and the cargo is a demonic mandate, a technique sorcerers have mastered over centuries. An ordinary perfume or incense stick would be spiritually charged. The process for perfumes differed from that used for mirrors. It involved spoken incantations. One would blow onto the perfume for hours while reciting specific words and blend it with certain invisible powders that dissolved in the liquid without altering its scent or color. Once prepared, the perfume could be charged for various missions. A perfume charged to induce mental confusion, for instance, would prevent a person from thinking clearly, leading them to make absurd decisions. She trusted the wrong people and rejected those who wanted to help her. Another type of charged fragrance designed to block prayer meant that whenever the Christian tried to kneel, they would feel an irresistible drowsiness or an inexplicable aversion to the things of God. And how did these fragrances find their way into your home? Just like the mirrors, through gifts or purchases at markets where a sorcerer had visited the vendor to place the charged product among their wares. A person would come to buy an ordinary fragrance and leave with a spiritual weapon turned against themselves. I remember a man in Bafoussam, a prosperous merchant named Musa. He had a large shop in the central market, and his business had been thriving for years. He made a good living. His 4 children attended good schools. His wife was happy, and everything seemed in order, but a jealous competitor, a man whose shop was right across from his, could not bear to see Musa prosper. This competitor came to see me. He said, I want his customers to leave. I want his shop to empty out. I prepared a special item, an incense with a sweet, pleasant, and reassuring scent, and had it placed in Musa's shop by a regular customer. This customer offered the incense, saying, Here, brother, this is a good fragrance for the shop. It attracts customers. Musa accepted it gratefully. He began burning this incense every morning when he opened his shop. The scent would spread throughout the space, and here is exactly what happened. Within a week, his regular customers, those who came every day, began spacing out their visits for no apparent reason. Within 2 weeks, new customers entering the shop would look at the products and leave without buying anything. They didn't know why. They would simply say, I'll think about it, and never return. Within a month, the stock stopped selling. The merchandise just sat on the shelves. 3 months later, he was forced to close one of his 2 shops. Musa was baffled. He prayed, he fasted, and he paid his tithes. Yet, every morning, he was unwittingly fueling the very instrument of his own destruction with his own hands. But wait, the third type of object is the one I find most unsettling to reveal. The reason is that it touches on something deeply personal and intimate. Heirloom jewelry. When I speak of jewelry, I mean rings, bracelets, necklaces, gold or silver chains, and pearls, pieces passed down from family members like a mother-in-law, grandmother, or aunt. Jewelry given to you at your wedding, upon the birth of your first child, or simply on an ordinary day for no apparent reason. Here, my daughter, take this bracelet. It belonged to my mother. Now it is yours. You know, in Africa, when an elder gives you a piece of jewelry, you do not refuse. It is a matter of respect, tradition, and family ties. Refusing would be seen as an affront. But here is what many people do not know and what sorcerers keep secret. Some of these pieces carry spiritual covenants, pacts, or commitments that do not die with the original wearer. These pacts are passed down along with the object itself. When a woman wears a ring that has been spiritually charged, it creates an invisible link between her and the realm of darkness, a link that becomes particularly active at night. Through this connection, spirits gain access to her body, her dreams, her fertility, her marriage, and her destiny. I have seen cases of women unable to conceive for 5, 7, or even 10 years. They consulted every doctor, yet all their medical tests came back normal. There was no medical explanation for why she was unable to conceive, and when the situation was examined in the spiritual realm, it was discovered that she was wearing an heirloom piece of jewelry that contained a pact of sterility. A pact made generations ago. The piece of jewelry was beautiful, it held both sentimental and financial value, yet, in the unseen realm, it acted as a chain, binding the woman to a mystical marriage with a spiritual husband. As long as she wore it, no earthly man could truly fully access her, for she was already taken. Let me tell you the story of a young woman from Gauntia, in northern Cameroon. Her name was Aminata. She was 20 years old, intelligent, and held a degree in management. She had a good job at a local company but could not seem to get married, and it wasn't for lack of suitors. Men would regularly approach her, yet no relationship lasted more than 2 or 3 months. They would leave without a clear explanation, simply saying, "I don't know what's happening, I just don't feel right when I'm with you," as if something from within was repelling them. Since the age of 10, she had worn a silver bracelet given to her by her paternal grandmother. It was a magnificent object, a precious item featuring traditional patterns engraved into the metal. However, decades earlier, a village fetish priest had prepared the bracelet. The grandmother herself likely didn't fully grasp the nature of what she was passing down. She was merely repeating a family tradition that had endured for generations, gifting the bracelet to the eldest daughter. Through this bracelet, a spirit of mystical marriage had been tethered to Aminata for 9 years. Every night in her dreams, she saw a man, always the same face. He would speak softly to her and touch her, behaving just like a husband. In the morning, she would wake up with no clear memory of the encounter, yet she felt a profound exhaustion and an inexplicable aversion toward the men who approached her in her waking life. Now, I must tell you about the 4th object, the one I saved for last because it is the most hidden of all, the one you will likely never see with your own eyes: earth-buried fabrics and garments. Yes, you heard that right. There is an ancient practice, passed down through generations, in which sorcerers bury pieces of cloth or clothing beneath your front doorstep, under your bed, in your yard, in the corners of your property, or even within the foundations of your house while it is being built. And let me tell you, this is the most formidable method of all, more so than mirrors, perfumes, or jewelry, because this method is permanent. It is anchored in the very ground where you live, and it is virtually undetectable. Here is how it worked. To begin with, one had to obtain something that belonged to the victim, a piece of fabric she had worn, an undergarment, a handkerchief, sometimes even a scrap of bedsheet. How were these items obtained? Through servants, visitors, or children playing together, or by someone stopping by the house and discreetly taking something from the laundry basket. Once the fabric was secured, it underwent a 7-night preparation process, 7 rituals, 7 nights of incantations. Sometimes graveyard soil, specific powders, or botanical elements were added. On the 7th night, the fabric was imbued with a mandate for gradual destruction, not immediate ruin, but a slow, methodical process that would eat away at the family from the inside, just as termites devour wood. Then, the fabric would be buried beneath the victim's house. Once buried, it acted as a spiritual anchor, rooting the curse in the earth, and as long as that anchor remained, nothing could change, absolutely nothing. I myself have buried such fabrics beneath family homes in Yaoundé. I recall a specific case in the Bayamasi neighborhood. The head of the household was known as Brother Atangana. He was a devout Christian, a deacon in his church, and a respected member of the community. Yet, in the eyes of our clan, he had committed a crime. He had refused to take part in a traditional family ceremony organized annually by the elders. He had clearly declared before the entire family that the practice conflicted with his Christian faith and that he would never participate in it again, a stance that provoked the elders' furious wrath. They summoned him. They said, "Esempa, this man is insulting our ancestors, he is rejecting our traditions, he must understand that one cannot turn one's back on the family without consequences." They demanded he be punished. I obtained a piece of his wife's pagania cloth she had worn against her body. Over the course of several nights, I performed rituals on the fabric, imbuing it with a command to cause gradual destruction. Then, one night around 2 a.m., I went to their home. The house was quiet, everyone was asleep. I buried the cloth about 30 centimeters deep beneath the threshold of their main entrance and left. From that moment on, anyone who crossed that doorway leaving in the morning or returning in the evening unknowingly activated the curse embedded in the ground. And here is exactly what happened. The first month, the son fell ill. He suffered from fevers that would spike every night and vanish by morning. Doctors could find nothing wrong. Blood tests and medical exams were normal, yet the fever returned every night. Then, the second child, who had been top of the class, suddenly lost all ability to concentrate. His grades plummeted within a few weeks. His teachers were baffled. Then, Brother Tangana's wife began to suffer from joint pain all over her body, migrating pains that shifted location from day to day. Finally, Brother Tangana himself lost his job. The boss, who had respected him for years, suddenly decided to fire him for absurd reasons. Within 6 months, a family that had once been stable, prosperous, and united lay in ruins. They prayed day and night, they fasted and held prayer vigils, yet nothing changed, because the anchor remained buried in the ground beneath their feet, and the door stayed wide open. I must now reveal something that very few sorcerers publicly admit: the reason why certain households are targeted more than others. These 4 types of objects do not function in isolation. They operate as a coordinated system, much like the 4 walls of a prison. An experienced sorcerer, one who truly masters his craft, creates an entire network within a home. The mirror opens a visual gateway, allowing demons to peer inside and observe the family's every move. Who is praying and who is not? Who is spiritually strong, and who is weak? The perfume or scent weakens the inhabitants' spiritual resistance, diminishing their capacity for prayer and dulling their spiritual discernment. They no longer sense danger or distinguish good from evil. The piece of jewelry establishes an intimate personal bond, tethering a specific family member to a specific mandate aimed directly at them. Finally, the fabric anchors the entire system into the very soil of the home, rendering the setup permanent and virtually indestructible by ordinary means. Once all 4 elements are in place, the entire house becomes occupied, controlled territory. Demons no longer require an invitation or permission. They move about as if they own the place, and that is why some people feel a heaviness in their home, a stifling atmosphere even when the windows are open, an inexplicable darkness in certain rooms even in broad daylight, arguments erupting for no reason the moment the family gathers, and restless sleep for everyone in the house. I remember a pastor in Douala who contacted me after my deliverance. He was a sincere man of God with hundreds of people in his congregation, a man who knew the Bible by heart and prayed with rare sincerity. He told me, "Somba, I don't understand what is happening in my home. My wife and I pray together every evening. We anoint our house with consecrated oil. We declare verses of protection over every room, every window, and every door. We do everything a Christian ought to do, yet every night, my 15-year-old daughter wakes up screaming in terror. She says she sees shadows in the room. My teenage son, who used to be the first to run to church, now flatly refuses to set foot there. He says he feels sick whenever he enters a place of worship, and as for me, a pastor for 15 years, I am suddenly plagued by temptations and impure thoughts I never had before." I visited this pastor and examined his home with the eyes of someone who knows this realm from the inside. I knew exactly what to look for, and where. 2874, and here is what I discovered in the living room. a decorative mirror given 2 years earlier by a member of the congregation, someone no one suspected, in the couple's bedroom, a bottle of perfume the pastor's wife had received as a birthday gift from the women of the church, in the daughter's room, a silver bracelet inherited from her maternal grandmother, which she had worn for years, and when I asked about the house's construction, I learned that 3 years prior, a mason had worked on the foundations, a worker recommended by a neighbor. This worker had been paid by someone jealous of the pastor's ministry to bury a specially prepared cloth in the ground. 4 objects, 4 entry points, a complete system installed without anyone realizing it, and this faithful pastor, who prayed every day, was unknowingly living in a house that had become territory controlled by the enemy. And here is what makes it all even more terrifying. Children are always the first to suffer. When these objects are in a home, children bear the initial consequences. Spiritually speaking, this makes sense. Because children do not have the same defenses as adults, their spirits are more open, more receptive, which is what makes them vulnerable to such attacks. Demons know this perfectly well. They target children first because harming a child strikes at the parents' hearts. It creates panic within the family. It forces parents to exhaust their energy and resources on medical consultations, treatments, and constant worry. I have seen brilliant students top of their class suddenly become unable to concentrate. Neither their teachers nor their parents understood why. I have seen babies crying ceaselessly, night after night, with no doctor able to find a cause. Teenagers balanced, happy, and sociable would suddenly become violent, aggressive, or deeply depressed without any apparent trigger. Meanwhile, their parents, experts in their fields, searched for explanations in the visible world: doctors, psychologists, school transfers, family therapy. Yet the root cause lay not in the visible realm, it lay in an object hidden within the house, one no one suspected existed, and as long as that object remained there, no human solution could prevail. Such consequences do not stop at a single generation. This is perhaps the most terrifying revelation I can share today. These objects create curses that are passed down like a poisoned inheritance. That charged mirror your mother kept in her bedroom when you were a child opened doors that may well remain open in your adult life today, even if that mirror no longer exists, because a door, once opened, does not automatically close when the object itself is gone. The connection remains. The piece of jewelry your grandmother wore, which now sits in your drawer, continues to function. The link it forged with the realm of darkness remains active. An object your father burned in the family home 20 years ago created patterns of attack that are now repeating in your own household. Your children, in turn, will suffer the same patterns if those doors are not closed. This is why you see the same problems recurring from generation to generation in certain families. The same financial blocks: a father who never succeeded in business, a son who meets the same failure, a grandson following the same path, as well as the same romantic failures, mysterious illnesses, and divorces. It is not a coincidence, it is not genetics, it is a spiritual system installed object by object over generations. And every generation that passes without breaking the system reinforces those open doors. For 18 years, I had a reputation. People came from far and wide to seek my services to have me destroy their enemies, their rivals, or their in-laws, and I carried this out methodically, without emotion, like a professional in the business of destruction. Yet, deep inside, something within me was dying a little more each day. Every night, I paid the price for my actions. The nightmares were constant and horrifying. My own body was deteriorating, inexplicable pains, illnesses that came and went. My own relationships were destroyed. I couldn't keep a woman for more than a few months. I had money, yes, people paid me generously. I had power, yes, everyone respected me out of fear, but I had lost my soul. Then, one evening, something happened that I absolutely did not expect. I was in Pfausen on a job. I had been asked to prepare items for the home of a successful businessman. I went about my work as usual. I buried a piece of cloth. I placed a mirror. I did what I had been doing for 18 years without emotion, without remorse. But that night, when I returned to my hotel room, something was different. Things had changed. There was a presence in the room, not a demonic presence. After 18 years, I knew how to recognize demonic presences. This one was completely different. It was something luminous, warm, and powerful, yet not threatening, like a light filling a room without blinding you. And for the first time in 10 years, I was afraid, not the fear of darkness I knew so well, but a different kind of fear, a holy fear, the fear a child feels before something immense and beautiful that he cannot comprehend. And I heard a voice not in my ears, but deep within my chest. The voice asked, "How much longer? How many more lives? How many more families?" I began to tremble uncontrollably, my whole body was shaking, and then I understood, it was God, my mother's God, the one she prayed to every morning while I was busy destroying lives. He was there in that hotel room, despite everything I had done, despite 18 years of destruction. He had come for me. That night, I lay there weeping as I had never wept in my life. I spent hours on my knees on the floor of the hotel room, all the suffering accumulated over 18 years, all the guilt, all the self-loathing, even the full weight of every family I had destroyed, every child I had made sick, every marriage I had shattered, it all poured out in a single night. I saw the faces of my victims flash before my eyes, the Christian woman from Douala whose marriage I had ruined, the merchant from Bafoussam whose business I had destroyed, the Bimace family I had plunged into chaos, and I cried out to God from the very depths of my being. I said, "Lord, if you are real, if you still see me, if you still hear me after all the evil I have done, set me free. I do not want to live like this anymore. I do not want to be this instrument of destruction. I do not want to serve the darkness anymore." And something broke in the spiritual realm that night. I felt it in my body, chains snapping one by one, link after link, bond after bond, like an immense weight being lifted from my shoulders and chest. The voices, the entities, and the shadows that had accompanied me for 18 years fell silent all at once. Total silence. For the first time since receiving that inheritance from my grandfather, there was silence in my head, and within that silence, a peace, a profound peace I had never known before and cannot describe in human words. The peace of God. The weeks that followed were extremely difficult, perhaps the hardest of my entire life. The clan does not let you go just like that. In the world of witchcraft, leaving the clan is an act of betrayal, and betrayal comes at a price. Jay was fiercely attacking me in the spiritual realm, terrifying nightmares every night, inexplicable physical pain, threatening presences around me, and even physical threats from family members who knew that Jay had switched sides. But God protected me at every moment. He placed a pastor in my path in Douala, a wise man who understood these spiritual realities because he had personally guided dozens of people out of witchcraft during his ministry. This pastor prayed with me tirelessly for weeks, and gradually, door by door, bond by bond, I have been completely, totally, and permanently set free from every chain. Today, I live in the light. I no longer live in fear or constant guilt, yet I bear the responsibility of revealing what I did for all those years. I do this because I know that millions of households in Africa, Europe, America, and wherever the African diaspora lives unknowingly harbor objects charged with spiritual power. There are mirrors that opened always, perfumes that weaken spiritual resistance, jewelry that creates bonds with the realm of darkness, and fabrics that anchor curses into the very ground. Every night, these doors open, and demons enter. Lives are methodically destroyed while the victims sleep, unable to understand why nothing changes. If you recognize the symptoms I am describing: nocturnal attacks, recurring nightmares, the inexplicable deterioration of your health, marriage, or finances, or sudden changes in your children's behavior, know that this is not just your imagination, it is not mental illness, it is not bad luck. It is a spiritual mandate, a mandate established through objects placed in your home, and it can be destroyed. If this video has touched your